It's episode 3. We got a good one for you right on the start of NHL Free Agency. Talking a lot of that, a lot of Bruins, a couple days away from the trade deadline in Major League Baseball. We're talking some Red Sox, old Paul Sox uni for you. And then shifting gears, we get some golf, a little bit of Olympics. We're going to touch on some of the NBA, what's going on there. And, of course, it's MarcelloMania. We had to get some wrestling talk in there. So let's go.
All right, MarcelloMania, episode number 3. Had to get Scott McDougal. He's a hockey expert. He's a Red Sox guy in and out. He's really going to enlighten everyone listening, watching today. Scott, man, good to talk to you. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, doing good, buddy. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited for the opportunity. Excited to talk some Bees and Red Sox and maybe a few other things.
Yeah, now typically you might say it's an odd time to talk some hockey, especially after the annual tradition of the Bruins letting us down. So it's been a couple months since then. But today really is kicked off free agency for the Bruins. So there's a lot of small moves that we might not get into all of them. We might look more at general sense. But let's go back a couple weeks ago to the Brandon Carlo signing. What was your thoughts on that? Were you happy with the deal? Were you happy to have him back? Can you just give me what you were thinking?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways you can go with this one. Number one, absolutely love the player. One of those guys, Bruins have been looking for a right shot defenseman, I feel like, since Johnny Boychuk. And, here we finally got one. Plays a responsible defensive game. The one thing that's concerning with him, obviously, is the term. 6 years at 4.1. All the concussion issues he's had, but it seems like they sacrificed on term to keep the player. What do you think, Phil?
Yeah, that was the only thing that concerned me, was just his issue with concussions. I mean, I like you. I like the player, and we need a defenseman like him with some size. But man, just to see the way he battled back, he got that Tom Wilson hit. He was out for a while. They get him back, and it was only a few games. And the hit that he went out on didn't really look like he hit his head that much. So it was just concerning. But I'm like you. I like the player a lot.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you get the multiple concussions in a short window. That's obviously very concerning for a different reason. Obviously you hope off the ice he's good too, but to lock him up for 6 years, they got to feel confident in his outlook moving forward. Again, love the player, and especially on a D that's lacking size. You got to make sure you start there, and then you're kind of seeing the trickle down effect with some of these other minor deals, as you touched on as well.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I really think defense is kind of, you got McAvoy obviously, and you got a couple other guys, but that's kind of an area of I don't know if you want to call it weakness, but they need more depth there. And then they lose a defender with the Kraken in the expansion draft. Do you still think that's the number one area that the Bruins need to address?
For sure, and I think walking up Carlo before that, was kind of indicative that the Bruins kind of saw where this was going. Obviously, exposing Clifton and Lozon, you could kind of see the writing on the wall there. No matter who it was, but yeah, I would say they've made a bunch of minor moves. I love Riley. Forbort's a big body, but it seems a little bit like they didn't want to commit to one player, so now they're kind of spreading out over 2 or 3. Kind of seeing if one sticks. I like the cap flexibility, but is Forbort going to turn into another John Moore contract where he's still on the books now, more for 2 years at $275? So who knows? I like that they're at least making moves, but we'll see.
And center is another interesting position. Sean Corrali, he just went to Columbus. Krejci, he feels like at this point, like, it's one of those things, they throw up his like all-time numbers in the playoffs, like where he ranks with some of the guys, and you're like, my gosh, like, I know he's been here forever, but he just seems like a Bruin. But I wonder what they're going to do with him. There's the Jack Eichel rumors. What's your thought on Krejci? I mean, I'd love to have him back, but if he does go, you might have some more flexibility with some cap.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it. It seems like a player that's been here forever. You feel like just, a minute ago it was 2011. He's, 26 years old winning a cup. You blink, and now he's a 36-year-old UFA. With a player like him, it's going to come down to term. It's going to come down to money. If it's anything more than maybe $4 million on a 1-year deal, I could see the Bruins passing. He goes back to, Czech Republic. But one thing that I can kind of see down the pipeline, depending on, if they're actually going to leave Rask out of the picture, they have 10.5 in cap space. Now that leaves a pretty good chunk of money that they could use down at that center position to kind of build some real depth there and get a top line player. Obviously I see it as an opportunity. Is there anything that you want to add to that as well, Phil?
No, I'm kind of with you. The hot name out there is obviously, in a sense, like a pipe dream if you throw Eichel in there. If they do bring, no complaints if they bring Krejci back, but it's just interesting what they're going to do there. It's fun, like free agency again. Today's the 28th. It started and it was fast and a lot of moves were going on. Like we were texting this morning, and I think like 5 or 6 moves Bruins strictly happened between now and then. So, with that, you even touched on it. Probably the hottest topic year in and year out with the Boston Bruins is the goaltender situation. Tuukka Rask. I mean, me and you, we text all the time, especially during like playoff games. But I'm just going to see what's your thoughts on before I even, go one direction or the other.
Yeah, I mean, the goaltending situation, gone back and forth on Tuukka. I'll leave my goaltending situation, we'll touch on Tuukka in a second.
Yeah.
First, a little bit of late breaking news. I was watching Felger and Maz before we started. Vladar traded for a 3rd round pick. He would have been exposed to waivers had he been sent back down to Providence at any point. So this is just them committing to Swayman. And Olmark getting 4 years at $5 million per seems like a bit of a reach. Good goalie on a bad team. You want to kind of see what happens with that, but it seems like a bit of an overpayment. And I think it leaves, the writing on the wall that the Bruins are at least going to wait on Tuukka Rask and see how he recovers from this hip surgery, 6 months from now.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, they bring another goalie in. Swayman's numbers in the regular season were really, really good. I kind of wish they had at least given him a game or two down the stretch in the postseason, especially, hockey players play through injuries all the time, but goalie's a tough spot. And then it comes out, Tuukka's got all these injuries. I don't know. Swayman, I think you might have a future there. It's going to be interesting. One of like the more head scratching things for me is I believe Rask just got surgery today. Usually when you have something, I mean, they've been out 2 months. So that's not really doing him any favors and the people that aren't on the Tuukka train.
Yeah, it's he's a tough guy to defend. I'll tell you that. It's just one of those things where it's like, I wonder how many tee times he had down in Mass. Like I would up and see how many rounds he's gotten in the last 2 months. It's one of those things, I get both sides, athletes are people, like he's, it's not like he couldn't walk, he was still like he could still golf and do all that stuff, but it's kind of frustrating. It's like, where are your priorities at this point in your career? You're 34, you're an accomplished goalie. You've been great your entire career in Boston, undoubtedly. But now at this point, he's alluded to kind of stepping away, talking more about his family. Is his head still in it? If so, great, sign him up. If not, not a fan of bringing that attitude into the locker room.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's tough too. He won a cup, but he really wasn't the goaltender. He was on the team with Tim Thomas, and the year before they kind of blew that lead when he was in net. And they've been in positions. They lost to the Blackhawks. They lost to St. Louis a couple years ago. They've had a team where I think they should have cashed in at least 1 or 2 more. And I don't know if I was in his shoes, and everyone's different. Like you said, everyone's human, but you got to think your career's winding down. Wouldn't you want to try and get that cup? I mean, once you retire, you can golf all you want. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a little frustrating to say the least.
Oh, for sure. And it's just tough to watch that. And then, you see other goalies, pushing it, like Carey Price having this final push to the Stanley Cup. It's just a little bit tough. It gets tougher to defend Tuukka by the day. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And, as long as he's been in the organization, as much as he's done, it's getting more and more to the point where it's looking like it's time for them to go their own ways.
Yeah, now we'll spin it a little more to a positive signing, one that kind of thought was going to happen, but the addition towards the middle of the end of the season, Taylor Hall, seemed like it didn't take him long to jump in. He really fit. And then they kind of talked about it. It was almost an ideal scenario because he was free agent. They didn't have to protect him in the draft, and then they sign him. Can you just talk? I mean, you're the hockey guy. What about his fit in that signing?
I mean, we've been wanting Taylor Hall in Boston since we drafted Sagan.
Yeah.
All that guy did in pre-draft interviews was talk about how much he loved Boston. He was number 4 for Bobby Orr. Has wanted to be in Boston since he was 18 years old. So I think he finally saw his chance and just sunk his claws into it. I mean, you've been stuck in New Jersey, Edmonton, Buffalo. Like, can you blame him? You know,
Yeah.
Good situation. Enter Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand. Like, you got to be loving life at that point.
Yeah, it's awesome. Really happy how that played out because that's always the risk you run. I mean, they traded for a guy like Yager. They get some guys. Sometimes you get them for a year, 2, then they walk. Sometimes you get them for a half a season and it's gone, and you give up assets. So to trade for someone that's still got a lot of years left, I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, and it's great. Like, he's talked about, wanting to be in Boston, but it's nice to see him walk the walk with his contract. 4 years at $6 per. Keeping that, mark of, he makes less than Bergie kind of thing, which, again, brings into question, do we see a big move up the middle for the Bruins? I would guess not, because anybody that they would bring in would be making more money. And then you bring in that whole issue, and then your cap blows up and we're back where we were 5 years ago.
Yeah. No, that's the tricky thing. But as you mentioned, give him a little bit of a discount. So that means he really likes the team, wants to be there. We're going to shift gears. Another good time that we're talking right now because it's the Red Sox. We're coming up on the trade deadline. We're a couple days out, but I want to start with just more of a generic. I don't know about you. Going into the season, I thought they would obviously be better, but I thought they'd be kind of middle of the pack. What do you think has been, I mean, outside of Cora, because I think Cora is clearly the biggest difference. Like, what's been the most surprising aspect of this team that they're not kind of fighting just to stay 500 ball?
Yeah, I mean, if you watch the team, like, up here, I get to watch all the games. Their resiliency is the number one factor that I see. I didn't expect. You have a bunch of plucky young guys. Strategically, Heim picked a bunch of undervalued people, and this group seems to be greater than the sum of their parts. So you're seeing Alex Cora really shine, in my opinion, as a clubhouse manager, putting people in the best positions. You look at a guy like Kike Hernandez, who I wanted to shoot to the moon in the first month of the season. On fire. And Christian Arroyo, who can't stay off the injured list. I love him. He's on fire as well. All these young, plucky guys that are playing above their heads, and they're having fun. And I would say that's the biggest surprising part. The pitching stinks. Garrett Richards stinks. Get him off my team. That's not surprising, but –
yeah, no, I mean, we're definitely going to get to pitching because that's one of the areas that they're rumored to adjust. But as you mentioned, 33 comeback wins. I mean, we could have done a show just on their last series with the Yankees and just on the other night, Monday night, I think it was, when Verdugo hits that 2-run jack in the 8th and the place just goes wild. I mean, that Yankee series, they could have lost that series 3-1. Instead, Thursday night, the guy just keeps throwing wild pitches into the dirt. They win the next day, and then Sunday.
Vibes of Rick Ankiel on that one, but that was just like if you think of the trajectory of the 2 seasons, if Germán completes that no-hitter, and the Yankees get that big win, and the Red Sox get no hit, they're going down momentum-wise. Instead, you have these 2 teams that are just on opposite planes right now. The Yankees are done. They look like they're trying to add at the deadline. Why? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But you see the Red Sox right now, and they're a team that seems to just never give up, and they have momentum on their side. They know how to use it.
Classic overthinking. It's almost like you give the Yankees a win or two. They're clearly not good enough to contend. Maybe they just shoot themselves in the foot and they go for it and give up their farm system. But anytime you can beat the Yankees and epic collapses like that, I mean, you take that every time as a Sox fan. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the deadline, but we'll keep it a little more general real quick. When you're looking at the American League, obviously Tampa's right on the heels of Boston. They're making you work for it. What other, who else do you see between the AL and then maybe an NL favorite or 2 that you might think could go the distance? I mean, the Padres look pretty good out west. Obviously, we got Tampa in the AL. What teams do you think are going to just be challenges in the end for the Sox or whoever?
Yeah, I mean, in the AL, I feel like it's really a 2-horse race between the Red Sox and Rays. I think they're going to push themselves. Maybe you can see a team from the West make a push. I feel like there's always the Oakland A's making a run, but not this year, I don't think. But in the NL, I mean, man, I don't see how you look at the NL West and don't see, some out of the Giants or the Dodgers making a run. They're both playing great baseball, and they both seem to, just not, lose any steps. And you look at the Dodgers roster, you got players underperforming everywhere, but here they are,
Yeah.
making a push. So, I think that really the Red Sox just have to worry about pacing the Rays. You look at them adding Nelson Cruz. So, your biggest competition's adding a big power hitter. You would then logically think that the Red Sox would be looking at pitching, but, we got a couple days here. Anything could happen.
Yeah, and it was interesting when they added Cruz a few days ago. In a sense, a lot of the talk that I heard, and who knows what will happen, but all of a sudden it made a guy like Rizzo more attainable because the price tag wasn't so high for Cruz. So what do you think? Because that's kind of what I've been hearing. They needed a little help at first. Rizzo kind of fits that mold, and then maybe some pitching.
Yeah, I mean, Rizzo, I think you very rarely get these perfect fits. Rizzo's a guy that,
Taylor Hall.
Yeah, exactly. Rizzo's one of those guys like, I've loved him since he was a prospect. We traded him for Adrian Gonzalez. Theo plucks him to the Cubs, and then the rest is history. With him, you very rarely get the perfect platoon bat, defensive first baseman, and a leader in the clubhouse. You very rarely get that fit, and he's going to be reasonably priced. And he probably wants to be here.
Yeah.
So, I don't think that could be understated for a guy who had he was such a big part in the great culture they had in Chicago. I have a tough time thinking of this Red Sox team mixing up with him would be a bad thing. I got to think it's going to mix perfectly.
Yeah, I know, man. I'm just getting visions of Doug Minkiewicz. Obviously, he's a much better hitter, but I'm just thinking when they add some pieces like that and then it works out, you're like, oh, that was the best move ever.
Yeah, and the thing is, Red Sox, with their prospect pool, you look at the Portland Sea Dogs, their Double-A affiliate, and winning 18 of their last 19. Never a better time to sell on some of these prospects who are playing above their heads, having career years. Unfortunately, not every prospect pans out, and I know that they've developed some depth recently, specifically position player wise. I think it only takes a mid-level prospect and maybe a lottery ticket A-ball pitcher to land Rizzo, and I love that. You get a guy on short term, short money, love it.
You got to take that every time if that is indeed the price tag, and if it's a little more, I think you go for it because all of a sudden this team, they're not phonies. They don't make these comeback wins. They don't make the moves they do if they're not a real contender. So that'll be interesting. You mentioned Portland. Chris Sale's had a couple nice rehab starts there. Do you think, it's hard to know because he's obviously got to build the arm strength up, but what role do you see them bringing him back? He comes back to the major leagues and throws 3-4 innings. They work him in. What do you think they're going to do with him?
Well, real quick, can you imagine being one of those guys? You're 22 years old, just trying to, plug along in Double-A, and here comes Chris Sale throwing frisbees.
Gosh. Yeah, that wouldn't be too fun. But I guess if you're going to get to the majors, you're going to see him.
Yeah. But to your question, I think it's, obviously out of the question to expect him to be Tommy John, Chris Sale in terms of being the absolute ace. But the way he's been pitching, I don't think it's unreasonable to see him, be a little bit less than that, but still a very excellent pitcher, maybe a 2 rather than an outright ace, which puts so much less pressure on a rotation that's, Nathan Eovaldi, God bless him, has been pitching way over his head, but he ain't a number 1.
Yeah.
So putting everybody back in their correct role is going to help a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez kind of, relax his shoulders a little bit. Eovaldi's not going to have to push as much. You're not going to have to, trot out Garrett Richards every 5th day. Quick Garrett Richards stat. Last 7 starts, 7.55 ERA, 31 innings pitched, 45 hits, 11 Ks, and 11 walks, and 19 strikeouts.
Not ideal.
Ugh. But while we're on the rotation, I love Tanner Houck.
Yeah.
Houck, however his name.
I think right-handed Sale.
Exactly. So, especially you're adding Sale. I think it's reasonable to expect him to be throwing, 7 inning starts by mid-August if he can get up here shortly.
Right.
He's always a guy who's faded down the stretch. So I can't think of a better scenario for him to jump in the season than mid-season. So
we'll stay on pitching kind of as we start to wrap things up. There's rumors about Scherzer. What other guys are you seeing out there? Obviously Mad Max. I don't know if he's using Spider Tack or not, but Mad Max is the most apt nickname I've ever seen for a guy. Obviously you'd love to have him on your staff. I mean, you just kind of get stupid there if you have a healthy Sale, Scherzer, and it just whatever. But in terms of pitching, what guys do you think might be attainable for the Sox?
Imagine a pitching staff with Scherzer and Sale in the same staff. Those two would just be nuts. I mean, yeah. So Scherzer, obviously number one pitcher. Everybody loves that. You look in Texas, you see a guy like Gibson, having an absolute outlier season. So you're kind of in the danger zone there when you trade for a player like that. Is that what he is, or is that just what he is right now? Another one, more realistic target, I think German Marquez out in Colorado. Got the ERA in the mid threes for his career, always been a great prospect, and you got to love pitchers who, stick through it in Colorado and actually put up good numbers. So, I think that they'd be better served looking, at those secondary options, especially, if you get a healthy Chris Sale, an elevated Tanner Houck, I don't see the need to reach for the ace this season, and albeit for a rental, I just don't see the need.
Yeah, that's my only concern. I would love to have Scherzer, but if you just and you mentioned selling high on some of those prospects, but he is a guy that's going to command a lot in a deal back that way. And it's just always the risk that you run.
Yeah. And everybody, talks like, Jeter Downs, use him as a prospect. Jeter Downs hitting 200 in AAA right now. He's not going to get you Max Scherzer. So, tossing out a bunch of mid-level prospects ain't going to get your Max Scherzer. It's going to start at Tristan Casas, your biggest power hitter prospect. And I don't want to do that for a rental in a season when we're playing above our heads.
Yeah.
Supplement that with, some good starters, someone who can get you into the seventh inning. Because that's been the issue. We have a great bullpen. Love to see at least one more arm added, though.
Yeah.
But play to your strengths. We have a great bullpen. Just get to the sixth, seventh inning. We don't need an ace. Is it great to have? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But for playing above their heads, I think it would be short-sighted for them to, really chase after an ace right now.
I just think all those guys, I think they're missing Pawtucket. They're up there in Worcester now. But, man, like you mentioned it, too, the bullpen, how could I not touch on the bullpen? Matt Barnes has been unbelievable this year.
Matty backpacks. Baby.
Yeah. So you wonder, they don't necessarily need something, but, I mean, say you add a pitcher or Sale comes back and, if he's not in the rotation late in the postseason, I mean, that's a tough out if you put him out there in the seventh, eighth inning.
Absolutely. He's a psycho, too. He looks like he's got the full sleeve and everything. He looks like he'd fight someone if he hit him and they charged him out. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be that tough for them to satisfy their deadline needs. It's just a matter of how far they're going to extend themselves. And I have, Chaim Bloom mentioned publicly that he doesn't think that the Red Sox have enough starting pitching. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go out and get Max Scherzer, but I feel like they're going to get someone.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're primed to make a move. Scott, man, this has been awesome. It's really a good time to talk some Bruins, oddly enough, and at the end of July. And then the trade deadline on the heels, man, this is awesome. We'll definitely get you on, some more episodes. I appreciate you joining episode 3, man. It's always a good time catching up with you, too.
Love it. Yeah, thanks for having me. We'll have to recap these moves and look back at how these takes have aged.
MarcelloMania bringing in my river friend, we should say, part of Team Boston, Pat Malecki. Pat, I appreciate you joining me.
Phil, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed the first 2 episodes. I'm glad I can be part of episode 3.
Oh, yeah. We were talking about it. We knew you had some good topics. We were going to get you on. Now, this is we're recording on Tuesday. It's July 27th. So just so everyone knows what the time is. But we're going to jump back to Game 6 of the NBA Finals. Just touch on it briefly because as today goes, it seems like it was forever ago. But the way Milwaukee came back in that series, I mean, going down 0-2, I for sure thought it was going to be Phoenix. It was just a matter of whether it was, 6. I never thought it would get to 7, and let alone Milwaukee win in 6. What were your thoughts the way it went 0-2 and then all the way to win 4 straight and then capping off the series in that Game 6?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts were when it went 0-2, I mean, I just thought Booker and Paul and Ayton I thought it was going to be too much, right? Love Giannis. I think he is an extraordinary talent and is just a different ball player than what you have out of your typical American ball players, right? I mean, he is a special breed. But I didn't think that with Middleton and Holiday, they had enough. I watched Game 5. Game 5 to me, winning that game in the way they did in Phoenix, I thought Game 6 was going to go to the Bucks. I thought they had it. Being at home and just everything they had done to get back into the series. And Game 5 to me was the most pivotal piece of that, the whole series. And Middleton was fantastic. Holiday, I thought really found his stride in 5 and then turned it into 6. And then Giannis is Giannis. I mean, the guy was unbelievable. 50 points. What do you have, like 14 rebounds or something? I mean, I don't know how many blocks he had, but I mean, an unbelievable basketball player. And to me, the most unselfish teammate in the world to sign a max in Milwaukee of all places. The AAU American kid would have gone to LA, New York, whatever it is. Giannis is, he's awesome. I love everything about him. He's team before me, goes to Chick-fil-A, orders 50 chicken minis because he dropped 50, and then goes with the half Sprite, half lemonade, no ice. I mean, that was the greatest video ever. I'm so happy for the city, for him. I mean, to me, it just not being a LeBron guy, it just kind of says, look, you don't have to form the super team to win it all. And I think it was awesome.
It's so refreshing. And, I think most years it's probably going to be those super teams that get it done. But to see a guy like Giannis, like you said, stick in a city, he signed a max. They really didn't change too much of the team. They added some pieces. You mentioned Holiday was huge for them defensively. And then he picks a couple games where he goes off and scores. But to kind of get rewarded, that's, we're Celtics fans, but other than the 08 Celtics and maybe some of those San Antonio Spurs teams, it was a refreshing throwback to actual teams that were built in team basketball, not superstar after superstar brought together. But and then that 50-point performance, he just decided he was going to make all his free throws, and he's so good on the defensive end. Middleton is a guy that stuck there with him. He had some games in and out, but it was just an all-time performance in a big moment. And that's really why we're sports fans.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the analogy of throwing it back to the Spurs team, right? And you had Robinson, Duncan, Parker, Ginobili, all those guys, Sean Elliott. It was just a different brand of basketball. And, the NBA can be tough to watch for a lot of people. I love the NBA. I like watching all the super teams are fine. Being Celtics fans, hopefully we can get a Beal, do something like that, or just add another piece. It'll be interesting to see what they do. But for Milwaukee, I think it's great for the NBA that, you didn't have a Lakers or a Nets win the title this year. And you had either a Phoenix team that would have been completely unheard of, adding someone like Paul, never been to a final. That would have been a great story too. Devin Booker is probably, he's a top 10 player in the league. He's unbelievable. And, that would have been a great story as well. But, I'm happy for Giannis. Just the way he carries himself and the way he acts, it's good for the kids that watch the NBA today to see someone like that.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously we could go on about the Celtics. We'll do that on another episode. Let's talk a little golf. It's been a little over a week now. Back to the Open. Colin Morikawa really looking good. He's hitting 69% of his fairways. His last round, he really just kind of took control. Another thing I enjoyed watching as a fan, though, because it seemed like it had been a long time, was just having Spieth out there and kind of in the mix. It was refreshing, and you kind of hope, just for the game of golf, that he's getting back into it, because the storyline's always good when his name's out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought the Open Championship was fantastic. I did not take Colin. That's my fault. My son, Colin, would be upset about that. But I thought, Morikawa is a tremendous golfer. To win his second major and to be able to win the Open Championship in front of fans was awesome. Seeing Spieth be competitive the way he has been this year is just fantastic. And if you look at this year, right, you had the TPC, which is the fifth major. Golf did a tremendous job with how they aligned all the tournaments. TPC in March, JT wins, great name. Then you have the Masters, and you have someone like Hideki Matsuyama, who is just, awesome. He's a great golfer. And for him to win at Augusta in the way that he won was great for the game of golf. The PGA, you could go a throwback with Phil. I mean, what a great story. No one saw that coming. Then you get the US Open, you get a guy like John Rahm. John Rahm is the best. I think his game is, and he was my Olympic gold medalist until he got COVID, but John Rahm winning a major was fantastic. And then you get to Morikawa winning his second major on a tough track was great. And then you move into the Olympics. It's awesome. I mean, golf this year has been great because after the Olympics, then we get the FedEx Cup and then you get the Ryder Cup. I mean, they have just stacked this as a golf enthusiast. It could not be better.
Yeah, obviously last year COVID changed everything, but it was 2-3 years ago where they messed around and changed up some of the scheduling with the majors and some of that. And it's really, as you mentioned, it's played out extremely well. This year, the Olympics, 2020 Olympics and 2021 is pretty awesome. That's actually starting on Thursday. And it's interesting because it's not like a team score, but if you're the US, you want to get 2 or 3 in the top 3, and that represents the United States. So the U.S. team, as you mentioned, John Rahm, he's not U.S., but he keeps getting COVID left and right. I feel bad for him. At least he got the major. But you got Justin Thomas, you got Morikawa, who's riding high. It was Xander Schauffele. It was supposed to be Bryson DeChambeau. So you kind of swap one villain, in a sense, out for another with Patrick Reed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that one, it would have been great if they could have gotten Spieth in. Bryson's tough. He's a tough guy to like. Patrick Reed might be even tougher with his antics. But I mean, I think the U.S. is positioned to get 2 out of the 3. I mean, I've got JT winning gold. Morikawa, I think he gets the silver. And then I threw in, this is my wild card, I think Tommy Fleetwood will win the bronze. I love Rory. I've always been a Rory guy. I don't think he's going to get it done. He can't put 4 consistent rounds together. He can't do what needs to be done consistently. So I think it's going to be JT. I think it's going to be Morikawa. And I think, like a Fleetwood will probably be a bronze. I think we get 2 out of 3. Maybe one of our guys finishes for the bronze, but I think the U.S. is strong. We're going to be strong in the Ryder Cup. We're going to be strong in the Olympics. It's going to be fun to watch.
No, I totally agree. I was looking at the field earlier, and I got to think, I would think the U.S. is probably going to get a couple as well. And it's interesting looking ahead to the Ryder Cup. That's in Whistling Straits. Now, the U.S., obviously, they win 26-14 all time, but Europe's won 2 of the last 3. I like looking at the lineup of the guys. This is early because it's not happening until September that we're kind of touching on this. I like the U.S. field. It's going to be interesting, though, with Brooks and potentially Bryson if they're teaming together. But you got Colin, you got DJ. I believe Steve Stricker's the captain. That's always a fun format to watch when you get a little country competition.
Yeah, I mean, I went to the one they won in Hazeltine. I was there in Minneapolis. It's a different golf tournament than anything else that you'll ever go to. It's a different feel. It's a different vibe. I really like the way the U.S. is set up with Morikawa, DJ, Bryson, Koepka, JT, and Xander. They're on the team as of right now based off of points. Then you look at you're going to have Spieth. They're going to take Reed. And then after that, it's who are going to be other guys, right? Because he gets 6 captain's picks, 6 guys qualified. Someone like a Patrick Cantlay, I think he's a no-brainer, solid golfer. Then I think you take like a Webb Simpson because he's a solid vet. But then it's you got 2 spots left. You take Phil, Daniel Berger, Tony Finau, and then there's some other guys in there. So I think we're really well positioned. And looking at the Euro side. It's really interesting. I mean, here are the names: Rahm, Fleetwood, Hatton, Fitzpatrick, McIlroy, Hovland, Westwood, and some guy named Perez. That's their team that will qualify. And then after that, you don't know who else. I mean, guys like Ian Poulter, Justin Rose, Sergio Garcia, they're ranked 17 or worse in the Euro standings, but they're probably going to be taken by Patty Harrington because they've got they've played before, but do they have the game still? So it's going to be really interesting to see how that team shakes out. I think I love both the captains. I think, Stricker being in his home state is going to be just guns ablaze and ready to go. And, Patty Harrington, I mean, 2-time British Open winner and just an awesome Irishman. I mean, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, Wisconsin. It's going back to Wisconsin and Whistling Straits. I'd love to see, just because of how much, energy and how he's really, in a sense, come out the last few years and really showed more personality. I'd love to see him have Phil on there. It wasn't too long ago where he wasn't saying much, and now he's kind of like Tom Brady, where they're just on social media, just mixing it up with people, and the swagger is just amazing.
Well, I mean, I think you have to take him just because he has the best calves in the game. I mean,
Yeah.
bottom line, he's got the best calves in the game. He's won a major. I think he can add something. If you don't take him, he's going to be an assistant captain or something like that. He'll be there to add some type of seniority to it and keep the guys loose. But again, you take him on the team, you put him in the spots where you want him. Maybe he plays once on Friday, doesn't play Saturday, but you have him for singles and he goes out and maybe wins the first match or wins like the second or third. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, he's been there. He knows what to do. And I mean, hell, the guy can still hit the ball, as far as some of these young guys.
Yeah, it was so much fun. Even though Brady and Mickelson didn't come through in the match, it was so much fun to see Mickelson on the tee box walking up saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this." He'd smack it and say just like that, it land within 4 or 5 feet of the pin. I mean, I just love his attitude right now. And I will say, growing up, I was not a big Mickelson guy, but just over the years, I've started to like him more and more.
Yeah, I love Phil. I've always been a big Phil guy. I've never been a big Tiger guy, but I've learned to appreciate what he's accomplished and what he's done for the game of golf as I've gotten older and learned more about his, upbringing and the pressure. I think that, the match, what him and Tiger did with doing the match, the first one was great. Then having Peyton and Tom was fantastic. They couldn't have picked two worse individuals with Bryson DeChambeau and Aaron Rodgers personality-wise for the match, though.
Yeah, it was tough because I mean,
Yeah,
I like Rodgers, and I know they didn't go all 18 holes. Like at first, his dry sense of humor is kind of funny, but then when you're sitting there towards the end, it's kind of like, all right, it just gets a little bit old after a bit.
Rodgers is a great Jeopardy host, and he's a hell of a quarterback. I wouldn't want to play 18 holes with him. I feel like it would be rather boring. I would take Phil and Brady all day and just have the time of my life.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Rodgers, he's back at camp. Personally, I think he kind of wants, and it's starting to come out more and more. It's not a money thing. I really think Manning was kind of the first one to do it. He got cut, did the free agency thing, but I think Rodgers is looking at a guy like Brady. We wish he was still on the Patriots, but Brady had a little bit of freedom. He walked away. He picked a good team and, had some weapons around him. So if you're a Green Bay fan, I think you pretty much got one run at it because then Devontae Adams looks like he wants out. But, I think you go all in for 1 year at Green Bay, and I think Rodgers is gone.
I agree. I think Aaron Rodgers, he's gotten what he's wanted. He's got a little bit of control. They'll get Devontae signed. It'll probably be a package deal where this is like the last year they're all together. Then they go on their own. And honestly, if I'm Rodgers, I'd want to leave too. After what LaFleur pulled in that NFC Championship game, not giving him the ball and, doing the field goal thing. I mean, you're Aaron Rodgers. You're one of the best quarterbacks in the league today. Give me the ball. Let me see what I can do. You would never do that. I mean, it's just insane. And I'm glad that he did it because it just assured that Brady was going to go to the Super Bowl. And, then it all happened. And happy for Tom, happy for Gronk. But I get Rodgers' problems with the Packers management and everything. I'm glad he's going to be there and he's not being traded. One more run. He's made 2 NFC championships in a row. Who's not to say he doesn't make a third this year? You got Jones, you got Adams. They've done some other things. They're going to be competitive. They're in the NFC North. I mean, there's nothing else there. You got Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, and whatever Chicago has.
Yeah, and in Green Bay, it's one of those teams that football is more compelling when they're in the mix. But no, I think it's definitely his last year. One of the main reasons, obviously, you're a big golf guy. You know everything, really. But MarcelloMania, a little Hulkamania spin. We had to talk some wrestling. That's why I got you on here. One of the reasons. Let's start with Money in the Bank. Now, I missed the first couple of matches. I tuned in about midway through. Just on a whole, that was the best WWE pay-per-view in a long time that I've seen.
Yeah, I would agree. We, the boys and I watched it. We had gone to a Squirrels game, and we started watching it. They watched the tag match on the way home, and I rewatched it. I thought overall, top to bottom, very good pay-per-view. And what they really did was a lot of SummerSlam setup when you go through it. You might not agree with what they did, but it makes sense with what they're trying to accomplish, in August when they're in Vegas, right? Live fans, second biggest pay-per-view of the year. It's going to be awesome. The tag match was good. Usos, Mysterios, can't go wrong. Give the Usos the belt. And the only reason why, it strengthens the whole bloodline, Roman Reigns, the Usos. It makes them the dominant force on SmackDown. I love it. You had the father son angle, you moved on. Then you move into the women's Money in the Bank. Let's just be honest. It was okay. Not great. Didn't really have the names as they've had in years past. And I was shocked that Nikki won the belt or won the briefcase. I really thought that they were going to bring back Becky, and I kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And then when she won, I was kind of like, okay, what are they going to do? And they did it the next night on the Raw, because they knew that we got to cash this thing in quick. And they did a good job there. So I thought it was a nice match. Yeah. But I was just waiting for the music of the man. I'm still waiting for the music of the man. She is unbelievable.
They've been teasing it. Yeah. I mean, she's awesome. And obviously, if she kind of mixes it up with Charlotte, that's going to be awesome. But Charlotte Flair is really on top of her game now too. I know we kind of got different feelings on the direction they're going with Raw. Maybe not the biggest fan of that storyline, but that match itself, Charlotte Flair, Rhea Ripley, on the pay-per-view, I thought was really, really good. And that's kind of when I jumped into the pay-per-view after missing the first couple matches.
Yeah, well, after you got through the Peacock glitches and everything, as we were texting back and forth, I thought that was one of the top matches of the night, right? Yeah. I mean, you could rank it number one. I think, and we'll talk about Edge and Reigns in a minute. I thought that was probably a little bit better. But Ripley and Flair, from the start of the bell to the end of the match, they brought it, right? I mean, Charlotte Flair is not just one of the best female wrestlers in the business. She is probably one of the best in the business, period, man or woman. She is unbelievable. And I think Ripley, she's got a long career ahead of her, and she's fun to watch. And again, you kept waiting. It didn't happen in the Money in the Bank. I kept waiting for Lynch's music to hit, and maybe she after whoever wins, she was going to come back. It didn't happen, but overall, it was a great match. It was fun to watch, and I mean, it was definitely worth every moment wasted that evening watching, trying to get through the stream issues to watch that match.
Yeah, it was awesome. And Charlotte Flair, obviously, Ric Flair's daughter, she learned from the best. The crowd's chanting for Becky. She's flicking them off, going ultimate heel. Just awesome. I loved it. And then that ladder match, the Money in the Bank ladder match for the guys was unbelievable. And the guys they had in there, you got Big E, Drew McIntyre, some bigger guys, but then you have Kevin Owens, John Morrison, Nakamura, you have Ricochet, Riddle, Rollins, these really, really athletic guys. Like, that match was just built for them. And it's kind of one of those things in wrestling. It's like, how do you do something new, do something fresh? But some of the things that they were pulling out during that match were just some things I had never seen before. And then at the end with Big E getting it, I mean, I thought like that was really cool. It's cool to see him get a little bit of a push.
Yeah, I mean, Big E's push is a long time coming, and that was awesome to see. I mean, they could have gone with McIntyre, but again, they set up something for later on. McIntyre's had the belt. They didn't want to give him the briefcase, but they set up the Jinder Mahal and McIntyre angle, so he has something to do until he goes back and pursues the title, which I thought was great. It was good booking. Ricochet and Riddle did a nice combination where they were together, and you had Morrison and Rollins together, and then they broke apart. And I mean, Ricochet, again, he's never going to win the WWE Championship, but man, that guy can fly, and the stuff that he does is unbelievable to watch. Kevin Owens is one of the best in the business. Doesn't get enough credit. I mean, he takes some incredible bumps.
Yeah, he does.
And I mean, he really took a pounding, but it was awesome. And then the best part of it was, again, I'm a big Seth Rollins fan. I think he plays a great heel. But Big E with the big ending off the ladder, I mean, something you hadn't seen. And then he goes and gets it. I mean, that was awesome. And again, they've set up something with Big E. Unlike last year when they gave it to Otis,
right?
Big E, he can cash in on Raw and reunite with the New Day. He can go after Reigns after SummerSlam, or maybe wait until like next year's Royal Rumble, or even he can wait till WrestleMania. who knows what he's going to do.
Yeah.
But at least you got a guy that can win the championship, and you know who's worthy to have the championship, which I think is the biggest thing with the Money in the Bank. You don't want to give to some guy that doesn't deserve it. And last year they didn't have it. This year they rectified everything that they messed up last year with Big E getting the briefcase, which was awesome.
I 100% agree. I mean, in a sense, last year was, I don't know if it was a waste, but I don't know if they were trying to find their way with COVID, not having fans. Obviously, wrestling is one of those things where you need fans. I mean, watching it without that live reaction, that fan interaction, it's just not the same. I mean, everything is better with fans, but I think wrestling is like night and day different when you have fans. And we talked about Rollins. We're going to talk about him a little bit more. That final match, first of all, Edge and Reigns, great build up, really good few weeks going into it, and they put on a heck of a match. And then you get to the end, a couple of things that I never saw coming, with Rollins all of a sudden coming out, interfering. Reigns ends up getting the win, and then we all know what happens at the very end.
It was an unbelievable match. I mean, the way it started, Reigns dominated. And you're like, all right, like, what are they going to do with this? And they had a lot of time left, right? And I mean, during COVID, those pay-per-views were ending at like 10, 10:15, 10:30. I mean, they weren't going particularly long. And I mean, it went to past 11 o'clock. It was awesome. But it was the whole match. I mean, Reigns dominated. Then, Edge claws back. And I mean, the storytelling that they did from everything that happened at WrestleMania to the build-up, him using, the crossbar for the CrossFit, or the bar for the crossface, going back to things that had previously happened, was just good storytelling and good wrestling. And that's what WWE does not do a lot of the time, but they did in that match. And it was awesome. And then, when the Usos and Mysterios came in, that was, you knew that was going to happen. But it didn't take away from what Edge and Reigns were doing. And then the Rollins interference, not once, but twice, was fantastic, because you knew Edge wasn't going to win, but they kept setting it up like he was going to. I mean, how many false finishes were there where you're like, that backslide, you're like, oh my God, he's got it. And then he does it. I mean, it was perfectly booked and perfectly executed by all the parties. And then, Rollins comes in, interferes the second time, Reigns spears him, and he retains. It's perfect, because you get Reigns, who is by far the best heel and one of the best wrestlers in the business today. He's come a long way since when he won the Rumble in Philly. I mean, a long way.
Yeah, huge.
And then, you set up Rollins and Edge for SummerSlam, which might be the best match, period. And then John Cena comes out. The music hits. I mean, the kids had gone to bed, Phil.
Oh,
right after that match had ended.
You thought it was over. Yeah.
The music pops. Both kids come running back down the hallway, out of bed, to see Cena, and they're going ballistic. I mean, it was perfect. You knew he was coming back. You just didn't know when, and they did it just like, I mean, it was awesome.
That's amazing. I mean, and you're right. It's one of those things he's coming back, but I thought the pay-per-view, good, real good pay-per-view, it's over with, and all of a sudden the music hits, and you're like, whoa. And it's awesome. And we'll kind of shift gears with that, starting to build to SummerSlam. You mentioned all the options that Big E can do. Monday Night Raw, the next night, Cena comes out. He continues his push for Reigns, shows up on SmackDown that Friday. And then you also get Bobby Lashley, and Lesnar's not back yet, so you kind of figure the next likely opponent is Goldberg. Last night, they didn't do a whole lot. I think they're stretching out the storyline. I think it's good. It's just you kind of know what you're going to get from Goldberg. It's not going to be, when it gets to SummerSlam, it's going to be a shorter match with not too much going on, but you got a couple behemoths going at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone wanted Lesnar versus Lashley, and it would have been awesome. And maybe they're saving it for like Survivor Series or Royal Rumble.
Right.
They've built Lashley into an unbelievable dominant force by him beating McIntyre, crushing Kofi at Money in the Bank. I mean, what he's done in the last 2 weeks on Raw, just absolutely dominating everybody. And then the beauty thing, I mean, Raw was terrible last night, but when he threw the jackhammer on Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin, I mean, that was just the perfect little move to give that match some spice. Because let's call it what it is. Goldberg was great back in like the 90s. And he was even okay in the early 2000s. His last few matches, with the exception of the one where he beat Lesnar, what was it, in Toronto or wherever they were at Survivor Series, have been terrible. He's too old. He's too slow. He's too dangerous to work with. It's going to be a 3-minute match. Lashley will crush him, and they'll just continue to build that monster. Just maybe when they can work something out with Lesnar, which is great. I'm fine with that. I know what I'm getting.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I know what I'm getting.
No, I agree with you, and I'm like you. I like Goldberg. I'm a fan, but I've just come to the point now. When he comes out, it just for me it doesn't. I don't have a pop. It just kind of is what it is. The ceiling's only so high for me right now. Watching him, I think Reigns and Cena is going to be great. We mentioned the fans getting back. That's a huge reason I think WWE saved some of their storylines and some of their push. But really, the biggest push is that other show right down the road, that other company, AEW. And AEW continues to go big. They added CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. CM Punk kind of seemed likely. The Daniel Bryan, for me, came out of nowhere. What was your reaction?
Well, I mean, I think here are my thoughts on AEW. I think AEW is fantastic. They've got a much better creative process than I would say like the Raw. They're supposed to be an NXT alternative, and I think they're better than NXT because they have so many more names. SmackDown is written very well and is a good show, but AEW, I mean, you got Kenny Omega, New Japan guy. The Young Bucks are an amazing tag team. They've really done a really good job of building their tag team division, which I think WWE is pretty lackluster right now. You got Cody, who is, a generational guy, with Dusty Rhodes. I mean, one of the best ever as far as just promos and just booking and so forth. And then they've built some really nice heels with MJF, and you got Jericho. And then, here's the thing. They brought in all these former WWE guys. You got Moxley, old Dean Ambrose, Miro, who was Rusev, Andrade, Christian, Punk, Daniel Bryan, which those two, whenever they debut, and I'm saying it now, Punk will debut at All Out Labor Day weekend in Chicago, his hometown, right? Daniel Bryan, they'll save. And then, what they've really done a tremendous job with that WWE will never do, because they're the 800-pound gorilla,
right?
Is that AEW has aligned with Impact, Impact's aligned with New Japan. And if you see what they're doing on their pay-per-views and everything, they're bringing in guys from the Bullet Club from Japan. They're bringing in the Impact guys on AEW. AEW is going to Impact on whatever night they're on. I think it's like Thursday or something. It's good TV. But, wrestling nowadays, to me, it's almost like having Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, and everything. There are too many damn choices.
Yeah.
It's
a lot, and AEW's adding a second show. I think it's only going to be an hour on Friday nights. That's starting like mid-August, and they're growing to the point with their roster size. They need to do it because the 2-hour show, it puts on a lot happens. You sit down and you watch it, you're like, wow, a lot just happened in 2 hours, but you felt like they're starting to just jam things in. The crossover, as you mentioned, with Impact is great. At first, when they started that, I was kind of confused, like, what are they doing? But it's been really cool to see how they've tied everything in there. And I mean, AEW, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I understand why some of these other wrestlers want to go there, because as it is now, you go work 1 or 2 nights a week. Your schedule's a lot easier. They're going to pay you good. A guy like Jericho is a lot more creative control. It's really refreshing in a sense, but I totally agree. I mean, I'll watch it when I can, but I guess that's the beauty of as you mentioned, if you got the TNT app, you don't have to watch it live. You can catch it back. You can skip through some of the matches. There is a lot of options out there.
Well, and the only thing, WWE lifer, I like WCW, but like the beauty about WWE is that they have their network, right? And it's through Peacock now. It's like, maybe $10 a month or whatever, and you get the pay-per-views, which is great. I mean, AEW, I bought one of the big ones. What is it? Double or Nothing.
Yeah.
It was $40-something, which, that's a lot of money to spend, and you got to be really invested in the product. I just wanted to see a couple of matches, and you can watch it back, so it was fine. But it'll be interesting to see how that company grows and what they do, right? And I'm sure they'll go to the model at some point where they have, a monthly subscription. And that'll be good. It's great to have choices, and they've got great talent. Yeah, I'm excited about SummerSlam. I think, the card with Reigns, Edge and Rollins is going to be an instant classic. Lashley and Goldberg will be whatever. The women's match with Nikki, Charlotte, and Ripley, I could care less about unless Becky comes back and they make that a fatal four-way. But the rest of the card is kind of wide open. And there's going to be just a lot of guys that I don't know if they're going to wrestle. Like, is Finn Balor one of the best talents out there going to wrestle? Kofi probably won't wrestle. Owens might not wrestle. I mean, and that's the problem. There's so many guys on all these rosters, whether it's AEW or WWE,
right,
that they're just not going to get a chance to show what they can do, which is hard.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's tough because, I mean, a guy like Kevin Owens, I know he's around, but, he pops out during that ladder match, and I was like, man, I felt like I hadn't really seen him a whole lot. He's a prime example. A guy like Finn Balor, who knows where Bray Wyatt the Fiend's been? You got to think they're going to bring him back. But
great point, Phil.
Yeah,
he's right for a return anytime. Does he come back at SummerSlam and mess up a match? Yeah. Does maybe mess with Lashley? Does he come out the next night at when they do the next show in Vegas? I mean, there's a lot of things out there. I mean, who's Bianca Belair going to face? Are they going to do Sasha Banks again? Or does Becky Lynch come back against her? If they did Becky Lynch versus her, now that's a card I want to watch.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of unknowns, so we'll see.
And I think you're the same way. I think in these days, it's unavoidable that you're going to see some stuff on the internet. Who's coming back. Personally, I try and not go looking for it. I like to keep some of the element of surprise, but then you're logically thinking, Goldberg's probably going to come out, and Lesnar's going to be back at some point. At least you hope so. But, still the wrestling fan to me tries to not go seeking it out. So it is interesting, as you mentioned, when's Becky going to come back? What's she going to do? What are they going to do with some of these other wrestlers, Bray Wyatt? Pat, man, this has been awesome. We're definitely going to do it again. I appreciate you joining. I think people are going to enjoy it. A lot of golf fans, and then the fans of this show, I think a good amount of them are some wrestling fans. So it's good. I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, no problem. My secret's out. I've always been a closet wrestling fan. Not many people know, but it's one of those things. It's a secret passion of mine. Love it. It's right up there with golf, and I appreciate you having me. Glad I could be on MarcelloMania, the 3rd episode. And anytime you want me back, I'm here for you, bud.
That's right, man. Hey, we'll make it a bucket list. We'll get to a Mania sometime.
There you go.